this is just a little chat for those of you who are watching between the three of us assistant directors of music at the three choirs cathedrals, and just a little insight into our thoughts on the festival and what we do in the festival that you may not see, because we're usually being up somewhere being heard and not seen. So I'm Jonathan Hope. I'm the assistant director of music at Gloucester Cathedral, where the festival was last year, and I'm also the musical director of St Cecilia Singers, and I play the organ for the Three Choirs Festival chorus every year, but mainly in the Gloucester years. Over to you, Nick.
I'm Nicholas. I'm Nicholas Freestone, and I'm the assistant director of music at Worcester Cathedral, and I look after the girl choristers of the cathedral choir, as well as playing the organ for the vast majority of cathedral services. And also I was to have been the festival organist for the first time at this year's Worcester Festival. Over to Peter.
I'm Peter Dyke. I'm the assistant director of music at the Hereford Cathedral, and I've been here since 1998, and I've played for quite a lot of the festivals. As assistant director of music, you do much of the accompanying during the festival week for the services, but also some of the concerts. But also our main role really is accompanying the rehearsals for the chorus, which begin as early as March or April, which is a huge job because the chorus has such a huge amount of music to sing in the festival week, and it's our job to learn it all so that they can learn it during the rehearsals, which is actually tremendously exciting, but a real major part of the effort that we have to put into it all. Jonathan.
And I think, Peter, you're the longest serving of the three of us, the veteran of the three of us, and you know as well as anyone that you get this pile of vocal scores in sort of mid-April, late April, and you've got to learn them in the next 2 or 3 weeks, note by note, and that's one thing that hit me quite hard when I arrived at Gloucester in 2014. Coming from an organ scholarship, it was a real steep learning quite quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that in fact things have slightly improved, because of my very first three choirs chorus rehearsal back in, I suppose, March 1998, I'd been here for about a month, or less than a month, and all the pile of scores, which is about that big, was given to me at the beginning of the first rehearsal, so I didn't have any chance to prepare any of them. And Dr. Massey was taking the rehearsal, and we spent, I think, probably 3/4 of the rehearsal looking through some Szymanowski Stabat Mater, which I think he was down to conduct that year. And then at the end of the rehearsal, as a sort of means of relaxation, he said, "Oh, let's now have a little canter through the march from Belshazzar's Feast," which is something that's on the programme this year, and of course now postponed to next year, which I was looking forward to enormously. But actually at that stage, I'd never played Belshazzar's Feast, and for me, that was not an easy thing. Perhaps for him, it was something very easy, but for me, it was not easy at all. Having to do all that crazy bit with Praise the God of Silver and all the rest of them. Fantastic music, brilliant music, and really fun to accompany, but much more fun to accompany if you know it.
much more fun to accompany if you're a 100-piece orchestra and not one man playing all the parts. Nick, you're the newest of the three of us, and you were here at the Gloucester Festival last year, which was your first festival, I think, wasn't it? What were your
Indeed,
first
and I had an interesting.
What were your first impressions?
I had an interesting role there, because I was actually acting director of music for Worcester Cathedral at that point. So I had the great pleasure last year of preparing the Worcester chorus contingent for the festival. So I haven't actually yet had the experience that you've both spoken about with preparing all the notes for accompaniment. My score preparation last year was very different. It was really getting inside the works from a about to take rehearsals point of view. And it was just the most wonderful week. It was the first Three Choirs Festival I'd ever attended, and it was just the greatest privilege to know that you're part of that preparation, and I've prepared that chorus contingent, and also have some playing duties during the week itself. So it's just the most fantastic week with the top level music making and the most immersive experience for a whole week. It's just a dream to do it.
And of course, last year you were thrown in at the deep end a bit by our organ here. Half an hour before Evensong, it decided it wasn't going to play ball, did it?
It did turn itself off quite entertainingly, just as there was a very short rehearsal allocated in the building. I was accompanying the Evensong that was being sung jointly by the Worcester Girl Choristers and the Gloucester Girl Choristers, and they just got into the choir stalls to have the pre-Evensong rehearsal when the organ turned itself off. But happily, the organ builder was on hand, and I think a helpful verger went down and flicked a trip switch somewhere, and all was well for the Evensong itself, and nobody would have known, which is always the best way around.
Yeah, because it was really fortuitous, wasn't it? Because James Atherton, who looks after our organ, was singing as a member of Ex Cathedra in the Rachmaninoff Vespers that very evening, and happened to be on site, which was extremely fortuitous. One of the delights of three choirs, not just the music and the concerts and the services, is the social aspects. And we are each able, as the three of us cathedrals, to have these festival villages. Worcester, you've got by far the biggest college green, so yours is always the biggest beer tent. Whereas Gloucester last year, for the first time, we had a little kiosk run by Ludlow Dry Gin, and they were a hit. I think they did quite well. And they were hoping to come back this year. And we are drinking some Ludlow Dry Gin. I've got the, which one's this? I think it's the elderflower, chamomile, and lemon verbena, which is very nice indeed. What have you got, Peter?
I've got the one that's called Spice, but in fact it's really aromatic rather than spice, and it's got a slightly warming flavour for those chilly evenings when it can be a little bit cold by the time the orchestra's finished the concert at about sort of 10 o'clock or so. But I think you're absolutely right. It was a really important social phenomenon, really, because of course you've got the chorus there singing a concert every night, the orchestra there involved every night as well, and the orchestra, of course, are the London-based Philharmonia Orchestra, fantastic, beautiful orchestra, and we get, one of the great things about the festival is how well we get to know the orchestra during the week, and how we really appreciate their huge musicianship. And I think it's true to say that they also appreciate the musicianship shown by the chorus and the other performers in the festival. And we, of course, as assistant organists, as assistant directors of music, have to play in the orchestra as well as organists, or sometimes playing the piano, or even sometimes I think I played the celeste. And you just have to play the various parts that are sometimes thrown at you at fairly short notice. But actually, it's a great experience to work with them in all these different ways. Continuo organ as well, of course. And I think the Philharmonia Orchestra are just superb musicians, and they are also superb connoisseurs of gin, we discovered, because I think the Philharmonia now have a partnership with Ludlow Gin because they appreciated the gin horse box at the front door of the close, immediately available after they finished the concert, which of course for any musician it's quite important to be able to relax at that point.
It's fantastic. Nick, did you play in a concert last year? You played several services. You played for the Three Choirs Youth Choir, didn't you? I think as well last year.
Yes, that was the youth choir was my concert commitment. So I didn't play in any of the evening concerts, but I did play for the youth choir, which was Carl Jenkins, the Armed Man, was the organ part that I played in the small ensemble version. So it was certain players from the Philharmonia with the organ, and it was a very successful concert. The first time I worked with Sam Hudson as well, so it was a very important concert for the both of us, actually. It was just a joy really to be able to work with these players, as Peter said, and I was very much looking forward to doing that again this year, and I look forward to doing it in future festivals. And also just picking up on your point, Jonathan, about the festival village. It was again my first experience of that, and it's just so wonderful to come out of a concert and have your eateries and your drinks right there. It's just fantastic, and I too have fantastic memories of the Ludlow gin. I'm sipping on some of the dry gin here, and it was just great to pour out of the building straight into the drinks queue, and adds a flavour, and especially having local produce such as that really adds a special flavour to the event. And I'm so pleased to hear that the Philharmonia took to it so well as well.
Certainly last year a phenomenon for me to play for a Radio 3 Evensong broadcast. And then 10 minutes after the voluntary had finished, I was in the beer tent outside the cathedral, eating pizza and sipping gin, no more than 10 minutes after the broadcast, the red light went off. So that was the first time that's happened, and I hope it's not the last, because I quite enjoyed it.
I think another side of the social things, I can just suggest this, is it's not just about the drinking of things afterwards, after the concert, but actually you never know who you're going to meet, because of course the audience is such an interesting group of people that you might meet somebody who's completely knowledgeable about the works of Stanford or it's slightly unusual music that we do at the festival. And one of the things I was looking forward to this year was playing in the concert with the Horatio Parker piece. And I don't know anything much by Horatio Parker, the American composer, and this was a piece which I think was premiered in Worcester in 1899, and it was going to be paired with Enigma Variations, which of course also date from 1899 as well. And it was going to be very interesting to learn that. And of course now we've got a bit longer to learn it, because it's all going to be in a year's time. But the way that you can come out of the concert and over a drink be talking to people who are real experts in the field in various ways, or people who've been to concerts 50 years ago sometimes, or maybe performed a really very long time ago. A long time ago at Hereford, when I first came here, there were a couple of people still involved in the chorus and indeed in the congregation of the cathedral who had sung under Elgar in 1933 when he conducted his final festival here. And the memories there, the well of memories, the reservoir of memories is quite extraordinary, and we can learn a lot from that.
It's true. I mean, at Gloucester, I've met someone who knew Vaughan Williams. People that talk about Howells when he used to come to the festivals as if it was yesterday. I mean, we forget Howells only died in the 80s. You know, it wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
It's so interesting. At the festival last year, talking about people turning up, we were doing a whole Evensong to celebrate James Macmillan's 60th birthday, and the outrageous and beautiful Mag and Nunc that he wrote for Winchester Cathedral and for the Millennium, and his anthem, O Sing Unto God a New Song. And it was during the sound check, I think, that he turned up in the rehearsal, and I don't think I will ever not have this sort of immediate, oh my God, it's James Macmillan, and playing James Macmillan to James Macmillan, and he couldn't have been nicer. So it's a real pleasure to meet these people. He then went and refereed the Three Deans penalty shootout afterwards. He was so at home. It was brilliant. Nick, what were you?
And of course, we were to have had a commission by John Rutter this year at the broadcast Evensong, which we were all so looking forward to getting to grips with, another absolute giant of the Anglican choral world, and the opportunity to work on a new piece by John Rutter doesn't come around too often. So I was greatly looking forward to that experience, and indeed we now look forward to hearing that and putting that together next year. But it's fantastic. And I was also going to mention, in terms of festival highlights for this year, the Gabriel Jackson large-scale work that he'd been commissioned. I think it's just so thrilling that the festival can continue to commission these large-scale pieces of music. They're not just 5-minute overtures or whatever else. We've got a real large-scale chorus, orchestra, soloists, monumental work. And I'm a great fan of Gabriel Jackson's music, and I was really looking forward to seeing what he was putting together for us and getting stuck into it.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, what do you think I was just wondering whether you've had a thought about what effect the festival has on the city, to our home cities. My feeling is that it changes the whole atmosphere in the city to have the festival there for a week, because it's almost as if the city becomes what it always should be. That's a place where people are just walking around the streets, talking about great things, and just meeting people and having a very. All the shops are doing special offers, and they are the cafes. They're all open, full of people just having a very lovely time and really welcoming people across the world. And to my mind, it only happens once every 3 years, of course, in each place. It becomes the city. Each city becomes really what it's the very best of what it can be during the festival week. And we're all coming from very different cities, but I think they all have that effect, doesn't it? They all have that same thing in common.
They really do. It's the same with all three cities. I mean, in Gloucester, from my perspective, Gloucester's a real melting pot of different cultures, races. People who are more deprived, people who are less deprived. There's a real cross section of all aspects of society in Gloucester, and it's amazing. As soon as the bunting for the festival comes out in College Street, and people can sense that something's going on, and at the cathedral, and they learn that it's a huge institution like the Three Crows Festival, which has been going for 300 years or so, and they want to learn about its history suddenly, and the pubs are asking me, when's the Three Crows Festival, we need to know so we can plan, all that kind of thing. It's really encouraging that such a venerable institution as Three Crows Festival, from the 18th century, is still having an effect like that in a modern city like Gloucester or Worcester or Hereford. And it's I hope it continues. I hope we're allowed to continue in coming years. Might be a bit different next year, but we'll get there in the end, won't we? How have you been, Nick? How have you been staying level during lockdown, and what have you been doing to amuse yourself?
Well, of course, we've all experienced the fact that we haven't been able to go into our buildings and play our organs, which is just the most incredible thing that I've realised we just came to take for granted. That sure, there might be the odd diary clash or whatever in the cathedral, but never had I thought that there'd ever be the point where I just simply would not be able to walk in and practice out of hours. But that's the way it's been for so many organists in cathedrals and otherwise across the country. So yes, I've been needing to find things to stay sane. And Sam Hudson set up very early on in lockdown the idea of a daily music live streamed performance on Facebook. We started doing those inside the cathedral itself in that brief period between public worship being suspended and full lockdown coming in. And then we moved those into our own homes as soon as lockdown came along. So there's that's developed into an independent venture from the cathedral, a voluntary activity from a group of 5 or 6 musicians who've been doing it on a rota every day during the lockdown period. So every 5 or 6 days, it would be a case of working out, finding a new piano piece to learn or polish up or plan ahead for what to play. And it was a slightly sort of humble instrument to play, just my electric piano here in the flat. But just it was so important to have the process of learning music, of getting it to a performable standard, deciding what to do with it, all of that, and then presenting it to an audience on a regular basis. And we're still doing that. We've stripped it back now to a weekly schedule now that more's going on again in the world. But on Thursday evenings at 6:30, you can still tune into the Facebook page and find a weekly performance from somewhere in Worcester. So that's been wonderful. And also I've spent my time putting together a virtual community choir, which was a slightly mad idea that came to me off the back of just a few conversations at random, as these ideas so often do. But I thought, I'll give this a go. And a lot of people have started doing it. So we do a different song every week. There have been about 40 singers each week getting involved. I write the arrangements, do all the backing tracks, do all the resources and everything, get those sent out. And then singers record themselves singing along to the backing track, send their files to me, and I sync it all up, edit it together, and pop it online. So that's been called Worcester Voices, and that's been keeping me sane, because again, it's the deadline every week of every Friday. I need to have a new arrangement ready and new resources to put on the website, and then every Monday I have to have the performance edited to go on. That I think that's a really useful thing, because otherwise you can get a bit stuck. And of course, now that we've got access to organs again, it's been the opportunity to learn all that repertoire that I've always wanted to. So that's been a joy as well. How about you, Peter?
Well, that's an interesting question. What you've done sounds fantastic. I've been doing mostly daily postings of playing. I'm very lucky to have a very small pipe organ here in the house, in the flat, which I've been able to use, and we've had a little bit of work done on that as well, but also the chance to learn some new piano pieces. But as you say, the daily discipline of performing to being recorded is really important, and that's to some extent even more strict a discipline, because you know that this recording is going to be carried on. It could be listened to long into the future, more so than perhaps just performing at evensong. But one of the things that I value about the job that I do, playing in the cathedral, is offering a voluntary every day, and that can be something that we just choose on the morning, or we plan weeks in advance, or it's particular to the day, or it's particular to the subject of the service, or the saint, or something. And a lot of people don't listen to the voluntary, but a lot of people do, and it's a little bit like putting something online. People choose to listen to it, or maybe listen to it for 5 minutes or 5 seconds, and then go off and do something else. But I think what you're doing is putting the music out there. The music doesn't exist unless it's being performed, I think, because it doesn't. If it's just sitting in someone's CD rack or on their computer, or sitting in sheet music in the shelves, it doesn't exist as music until someone's actually playing it and listening to it, or hearing it. And I think that's important. It's our job to get it performed as much as we can, and you never know what effect it's going to have on people. One of the other things I've done is we've got a load of old discs that I've made over the years of live organ recitals that I've given here in Hereford, and I've managed to put them online as well, which is it's a nice opportunity to get the organ a little bit more available. This is an activity we don't have time to do very often, so it's nice to get that sort of cleared up too. But I've done other things as well. I've done reading, baking, running. Gosh, can you believe it? And we've had the odd gin and tonic as well, I have to admit that.
As you both have said, I mean, I've really enjoyed having this time now since we've been allowed back into the cathedrals to practice, to learn, as you both said, repertoire that I've wanted to learn for the last 10 years, and haven't been able to, and that's been a real joy. I've been doing a few little sessions on days where I've been unfurloughed with our cathedral youth choir. Just keeping them a little bit key, singing them in groups of 5 or 6 at a time, and planning for whatever we may be allowed to do in the autumn. I've managed to do a few transcriptions for the organ. One I wanted to do for years, and that was the overture to the Flying Dutchman by Wagner. So I managed to get that. I'm yet to really decide whether I've made it playable or not yet. I've got to spend a couple of weeks deciding whether or not what I've actually written is actually playable. So I might have to pare it down a bit. So I've been enjoying things like that. I'm just looking forward now to what we may be allowed to do as and when it comes in bits and dribs and drabs. Looking forward to next year's festival at Worcester. I'm looking forward to Nick having his first home festival. Yes. And I mean, Peter, what are your thoughts about next year? What do you hope can be achieved next year, and how much does the festival mean to you?
The festival is I suppose I've had quite a long association with the festival. My first one I was involved in playing in was 1998 in Gloucester, previous century, and of course, the people who were involved then were different colleagues from the ones we have now, and it was. But I knew a little bit about the festival before, because I'd been along as a teenager in 1981 in Worcester and 1982 in Hereford. And I remember 1982 was the first time I ever heard the B minor mass, and I think it was being sung by the 3 cathedral choirs. But the B minor mass by Bach, just extraordinary music. I just remember it filling my head afterwards. How can this incredible setting of the Kyrie eleison that goes on for 10 minutes with just 2 words, and it's just so beautiful and searing, and it's interesting. I suppose I was 16 or something, 17, I can't remember exactly, and it really does have an effect. You can't the thing about a festival is that all sorts of people hear all sorts of music that they wouldn't normally choose to go and hear because they're there in the city for that week, and it gives them a chance to experiment, to hear things that they would never normally have the chance to do so. And I think the same thing goes for the Philharmonia. I think the orchestra love to play some of this repertoire, which is not the sort of normal concert repertoire you would do. So I think the three choirs has a really central role in the musical life of this part of the country, if you like, which is sort of, we're not near, well, Worcester, you're quite close to a big city, and Gloucester, you're quite close to Bristol, but we're miles from London. It takes, it's a real sense of pilgrimage to get to London from here, and even Birmingham is 1 hour 40 on the train. It completely transforms the city, and it enables people, and why shouldn't they, to hear proper full orchestral and choral repertoire, which is the most glorious thing. I always think in the cathedral it just sounds magnificent. That's the setting, the visual setting, as well as the aural superbness of the sound. It's whatever the music, there's just a real sense of occasion at one of the three choirs concerts. Of course, we don't just have the evening concerts. There's all the fringe events as well that you can choose to go to, organ concerts in different churches, chamber music and talks and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, I don't often get the chance to go to many of those because you're so busy playing for rehearsals in festival week. But it's just such a tremendous, exciting atmosphere, and people come year after year, don't they? From across the world. It's been a continuing success story, and I'm optimistic about Worcester next year, 2022. Of course, it was going to be Hereford 2022, but it's no 21. I get it right. 2022 is Hereford, isn't it? 2021 is where it's going to be in Worcester. Sorry, I don't mean to confuse anybody.
So it's 2023 in Gloucester, so that's even further away.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
I mean, I'm picking up from what you were saying about the Philharmonia really enjoying playing in these buildings that they don't. They're playing in a concert hall normally, a purpose-built building with the appropriate sort of acoustic architecture, and Gloucester and Hereford and Worcester have all got that as well, but in a medieval way. And it's a different experience. And the members of the Philharmonia I've spoken to have said it's really good for them as a discipline to play in these buildings, because you have to play in a completely different way, particularly if you're a brass instrument or a bass drum or a timpanist. There are things you can get away with in a concert hall that the cathedral acoustic is just going to take it and run. So. So I've heard most of the Philharmonia that I've spoken to have said that, which is great. And two of the highlights from my career, my very first three choirs concert in 2014, I'd arrived in Gloucester in the March and was suddenly thrust into these three choirs chorus rehearsals, which was a bit of a baptism of fire. And before long in July, I was playing the organ part in one of my favourite pieces ever, which is The Apostles by Elgar. That was at Worcester in 2014. Adrian, my boss Adrian, was conducting, and we had an absolutely stellar lineup of soloists. It was almost unsurpassed. I think we had Sarah Fox, Claudia Huckle, Brindley Sherritt as Judas, John Mark Ainsley was St. John. And for someone it was my first festival, not just my first festival of any of them. Suddenly I was playing with these kind of names, and as a 25-year-old sprog, it was quite an overwhelming experience. That particular concert, and the other one very quickly was playing on the last night of my first home festival in 2016, which was Mahler's 8th Symphony. That will stay with me forever. Getting through the months of preparation for a home festival, finally, sort of holding on the last chord of Mahler 8 on full organ up the octave with the solo reed coupled and the Philharmonia offstage brass up in the loft with me, knowing that all I had to do was take this chord off at the right time. And then I'd completed my first home festival and had a month's holiday, and it was a really wonderful feeling. So I hope, Nick, you get a similar thrill at the end of your first home festival next year.
I'm so looking forward to it. And just also, as you say, the preparation, that's the great thrill. It's immersing yourself in this music for in a really intense way over a number of weeks and months, culminating in that week in which everything happens, almost sort of a year's worth of events happen in 1 week. And I'm really looking forward to it, coming to Worcester and playing that part for the first time next year.
Great. We ought to wrap it up there, otherwise 3 choirs are not going to be able to upload it. You know,
well, it's fair to say we could go on with quite a lot of other stories.
Yeah, we could go on forever, couldn't we? But it's been a joy to chat with you, gentlemen, and look forward to seeing what Worcester come up with next year, and looking forward to Hereford the year after as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.